I think this is going to be a really great discussion that I got to interview the members of the panel earlier this week and got some really good feedback. So I'm really looking forward to that. If none of you know myself, I'm Jason Zuccari. I'm the Managing Director of Hamilton Insurance. We specialize insurance for senior housing and long-term care throughout the country. Also something fun, I'm involved in Hilarity for Charity, which we had last SLIF, which is Seth Rogen and his wife's foundation, all about Alzheimer's and dementia. And so I thought we would give a quick minute just to go, everybody go down the panel, introduce yourself, tell you a little bit about your company, even though most of all of you don't really need an introduction, but for some of the newcomers, if you could give a brief description of who you are and your company. So I'll hand it over to Doris to start.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Doris Sullivan. I'm the president of Retirement Unlimited. We're based in Roanoke, Virginia, and we, as of today, we have 70 communities, and we're on the eastern seaboard, so from New York all the way down to Florida. Our mission is very simple. We're 44 years old, and it's never changed since our founders, and it's to provide a lifestyle that our residents have both earned and deserved. So thank you for having me.
Great. I'm Dave Eskenazy. I'm the CEO of the U.S. division of Cogir. In the U.S., we have about 65 communities, and we're going to be managing a few of those holiday buildings that are coming over soon, so that'll put us at almost 90 buildings with those that we have in development. In Canada, we have about 200 communities, along with all kinds of other things, multifamily and different asset classes in Canada. So that's who I am.
Hi, everyone. Chris Hollister, co-founder and CEO of Pegasus Senior Living in Dallas. We have 36 communities, mainly assisted living and memory care. And thanks for coming. I've never had to compete with happy hour before. It's impressive.
So, Chris, I'd like to, I think, just start with you and jump right into this. You know, we've really had some great heated discussions about middle market, right? And I'd love to let you open the market of where you're seeing middle market. Is there a future forward with middle market, and where are we going with that?
So I'm in the senior care business, which is different from senior living in a way. In my view, it's that we're not trying to get people in to play pickleball and have a lifestyle like what Disney's doing here or Margaritaville. It is a care product, and I still believe in that. But it has, with wages, I think the middle market has become a bit of a unicorn. I think it's kind of imaginary without some sort of reimbursement, whether it's PACE program. And, you know, it's so expensive to build now. Most people, if you're just going by middle market defined by income of adult children, if that's 70, 100 grand, if that's broadly, if that's even middle market, how do they afford $50,000, $60,000 a year? So, you know, we can get further down into the pyramid, but I don't know if we can get all the way down without reimbursement of some kind, which is a decision we'll have to make as an industry and see what happens with public policy.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm with Chris. I mean, this is a difficult time for costs. You know, listening to Bob earlier, I have to bring up the word aspirational because if we just build the costs up, first of all, there's more pressure on costs now than ever from the capital partners. The return requirements are difficult and not going to get easier anytime soon. So if we just look at the cost it takes to do what we're doing well, along with the risks, the business risks, the insurance costs, all the other costs, and you just build up what it takes to take care of somebody, not in the way that Bob would like us to, and open it up to make it feel like a country club, but just the part where we're trying to take care of people and make sure they're well. I think those costs per month, per resident are so difficult, it's hard for me to imagine you can then put a number on top of it to give us the adequate profit margins to be able to satisfy what a middle market can really pay. So it's a difficult problem, and we're not in it. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I think it's a really complex model.
Doris?
I agree with both of you. The middle market, I think that from our acquisitions, we've moved into the middle market, and it's very difficult. I think that there's expectations and entitlement no matter what you're paying, right? So if you're in our DC buildings and you're paying $17,000, they have the same expectations as some of our buildings that are in Florida that might be at a $5,000 average rate. And so how do you balance that and still be mission driven and give our residents the experience that I think all of us are looking to provide? And so it's challenging, and I think through, this is why we're here, right? Innovation. We've got to innovate, we've got to find technology, we have to find those pieces that can help us, minimize our costs. Our goal is, one of the reasons why we're growing is trying to leverage size, right? So one of my promises or my kind of things to our executive directors was, I'm going to try to move your margin 5% without you having to make an operational decision. So through contracts or through leveraging our size, whether it's through Cisco, through our food provider, or those type of things where they can move their margin without making an operational decision that they're struggling with, on the ground. So that's kind of what our goal is.
That's great. That segues into the next question, Doris, actually, and kind of a twofold. And Chris, we've talked about this as well, is where margins are getting shrunk. There's different communities have gone with different avenues. Doris, I know you've really explored a bunch of different ancillary businesses in your communities, and so maybe talk about some of those things.
Absolutely. So as I challenged the executive directors to, kind of my action item was to raise their margin by looking at leveraging our size and contracts and things that they don't have to make operational decisions. We then challenged the executive directors of, here's your revenue for 2023. Can you make 10% of your revenue, that number, whatever it was, and whether it's a 72-unit building or our 550-unit campuses, can you make that revenue on there? And part of why we had to do that is rate fatigue. I think that our families and residents feel that increase, and there's always that moment, but yet there seems to be this other, ancillary income that they're willing to pay for different items. I'll go with the easy one since it's happy hour liquor. And so, at the community that my parents reside at, which is local in Roanoke, their liquor ancillary is very nice because of myself and my siblings and when we visit my parents. And so that is one of the challenges that we've tried to say, this is a problem that we want to solve together, with the executive directors and kind of with us, with our margin. And so that is one of our goals. So we're tracking, can they reach that goal where their 2023 revenue, can they make 10% of that in ancillary revenue? And I think kind of giving a benchmark has been a great goal for us to achieve.
I think we look at the businesses, first of all, it's its basics, rent and care, starting there, and we look at where our costs are. I mean, it's a really unusual business model. It's actually, I think the executive director is probably the hardest job I've ever seen in my life. I mean, imagine like running this hotel, but you're not dealing with, the customer really doesn't want to be here, okay? And half the family thinks they should be here, and the other half of the family doesn't. Half the family thinks we do a great job, the other half the family wants to kill us. If somebody falls, which is quite common in your 80s, it's our fault. We'll get sued for just about everything. There's life and death situations every day, and you have all kinds of bosses. You have capital partners, you have corporate office, you have all sorts of people. And so for the executive director, it's really, really hard. And not only that, but if you think about the business model, for every customer we have, for every 1,000 customers, we have about 600 employees. I mean, the labor model is just blow your mind. So all of that said, that's why if it feels like this business is hard, it's because it is. And so at its core, we have to look at where the labor is, because clearly labor is a big piece of this. And the labor's in dining and care. And so we have always taken a view of care being a department, a profit center. Now, we can have goals for the profit center. In other words, in Las Vegas, the casino used to be the profit center, and the hotel was a profit center. But you could have a goal that says, I'm okay losing $10 million a year on the hotel side if I'm making $100 million a year on the casino side. And over time, Vegas has changed, and now they find that they can have not only ancillaries, but a food and beverage department and a hotel department, and they can all be profitable. So Las Vegas has really pivoted over time because they felt they could. They figured out a way they could do that. It's interesting here that, you know, I did a show of hands a while ago at a conference of operators, and I asked, you know, show of hands if people thought they were, you know, losing money in the care department, and a lot of hands went up, but not all that many. And so then I said, well, show of hands of people that are, you know, making a profit in the care department, and not very many hands. So how about if you're breaking even and not very hands with it? Nobody knew what they were doing. I mean, they honestly didn't know, and it's interesting because that's the regulated part, that's the hard part, that's where the life and death part comes in, and that's where a lot of labor comes in. And so to not really even understand, you know, that part of the business is just sort of a mind blower. So we've always, you know, really felt like we have to have the blocking and tackling as in the business model first and foremost. And we have to know that, you know, if we're going to go through all this risk and business around a licensed area of risk as a business, it'd be nice to know that it's accretive to the business. So, you know, maybe margins are lower, but the total contribution from the care department in terms of NOI production is accretive to the business. And, you know, if you're going to go through all that. And so we're really focused on the efficiency of that department and then the efficiency of the rest of it, which I call the core. And if we can meet our objectives from a profitability standpoint there, let's just start there. On top of that, then, adding elements of revenue and profitability to that would be terrific. But for me, it's like, let's make sure before we get too distracted by all these other things, let's make sure we're doing this really well first, because that in and of itself is pretty difficult.
Chris, I know you have a lot to say about
Yeah, I think margin is the wrong metric to look at in your business because it's a ratio and you don't eat with a percentage, you eat with a dollar sign. And nursing homes have a lot lower margin than assisted living, but they can make more money per person. So maybe they're building 12 grand, but their operating expenses are 10. They're making $2,000 per resident per month. Our independent livings, we have 3 large ones. Their average rent with everything is $3,200. We run them for $2,000. Their NOI per month per resident is $1,200. If you look at NIC data and you look at it, we're anywhere from $1,200, $1,500, $2,000. We have some buildings that are doing $3,000 in assisted living. So we look at and we measure NOI per month per occupied unit per month for all of our buildings, and we rank them every month. And look at that. What that does for you is, because what Dave said is the hardest business. Everybody's getting something different. Half the people in assisted living now have some level of memory impairment, and just trying to get paid for what you do. So we're going to 12 levels in assisted living from 6, and we're going to 6 levels in memory care from 3, because we know nurses will change the assessment when they see it's going over. We know that the EDs and the BLMs, they dread that conversation. And when those gaps are $450, you just lose on that. And they're changing quicker because they're coming in with higher acuity. So what that does for you is it makes you realize you got to grow the revenue. And the revenue is a variable pricing model, and so is the staffing. The only way we can give you staffing is to get more revenue, because to record what we're actually doing with the care. So both those things have to change in a dynamic way. When you think about margin, you just think about cutting. So if it's static, you're going to cut, and then you're going to have quality control issues because you're not getting the money you need.
That's great. Dave, I'm going to direct this. So the next question is, and you touched on it a little bit before, about labor, right? And I like to, I know each of you have a different perspective on labor. I know, Dave, if you could speak to some of the challenges you've dealt with the labor, and then Chris, some of your hiring strategies, and then Doris, if you could talk about some of the visa stuff that you pose. But Dave,
I mean, you know, we heard a lot about AI today, and I'll give you the definition of AI, which we didn't hear today, which is getting rid of the humans, okay? Let's just call it what it is. It's having a machine do what a human can do. Now, our business is pretty darn human, you know, and it needs to be in a lot of certain areas. It doesn't need to be in all these areas, but it does need to be in certain areas of care. But humans are difficult, honestly, and the laws are getting more difficult. The risks are getting more difficult. There was a joke about, you know, the new generation, and it is a difficult, and it's getting more difficult. The worker is changing, and when you're dealing with this sea of a labor force and the risks involved in labor force, and there's a new risk in our business as if there weren't enough already, and it's by this economic cycle. I was watching Barry Sternlicht the other day, and he's like talking about the banks haven't even begun to see the trillions of dollars of impact that they're going to see from office defaults and whatnot. And what we have is we have an owner base here that over the last several years, some people came into this industry that thought it was pretty slick. It was a new entrant in the real estate sector because it's real estate after all. I mean, never mind that we have 600 employees for every 1,000 customers. Somehow this became a real estate model, okay? And these people that came into this business, I don't think had any earthly idea just how complicated and volatile and sensitive this business could be to the cycles that could happen if such a thing like a pandemic coupled with a doubling of interest would, of course, how could that ever happen? And yet it did. And so now you have these same people just running for the exits, or they will be, because their loans, which were deferred and kicked down the road, you know, during the pandemic, there's no more delay now. They're all going to come to roost. And as an operator, you know, we really don't have upside or downside benefit of the upside or theoretically downside risk if we're a third-party operator, or at least we're not supposed to. But you know, if you know anything about real estate, every time there's a real estate model put together, this hotel or a new building, you put a single-purpose entity together, you put an LLC around it. So if that thing gets sued, you know, it's protected from this building over here getting sued, can't affect this building over here. But all of a sudden now, when the building is sold or foreclosed on, or that SPE goes bankrupt, the operator, by the way, is the employer for all those people. And for 2 more years or 3 more years, those employees could still sue us because the statute's open. Somebody fell, they could still sue the operator. And the owner is long gone, and so are the insurance policies, particularly if we move to a claims-made basis, which is now a new thing, a new risk that I keep hearing about. And this is a big deal, big deal. And so there's still some more risks that are coming at us as operators that we have to be very, very careful about, and maybe need to look at that. Look, when banks make loans, even to these SPEs, they look for guarantees. But as operators, we don't really think about looking for guarantees on our agreement with the owner. And I think these are some new risks. And a lot of this stuff is really born and birthed by the difficulty of the labor market, coupled with the laws around labor and some of the risks involved in having so many people.
So what do you want me to talk about?
I think some of I think your hiring strategy.
The hiring strategy?
I think some of the hiring.
Could I just say amen,
And
brother, to Dave about the real estate, that this has the language of real estate, the investor community. And I mean, you don't go to a restaurant and say, people say, how was the restaurant? They say, it was great, it was a type A restaurant. And I mean, there's type A buildings that were built in the last 5 years that have walking distances that I can't hit a 9-iron down for assisted living, and it's because they did not understand the basics, as these are care facilities, okay? But hiring, the ED is the quarterback. It's a more important position than ever. And we've had a lot of turnover, and I think we need a whole, one of my points, right, is this, we need a whole new generation of leaders. And I was talking to Steve Moran at the cocktail party. We need better stories about what we do, to have people not be scared of it and understand they can come have a mission and make a difference in the world. And when we get young people in that way, they do see it. I call it the Hotel California. You get in and you never check out, you know. You have a senior living. But we had such turnover in the executive directors. He's my son-in-law now, but he went to the University of Texas at Austin. And he had a professor who his whole career and his PhD at Stanford was on hiring tough to hire positions, like people running warehouses. So we hired him, and we have 4 strands. That's one of them. Predictive index, cognitive and behavioral are the other 2. And then we have a new emotional intelligence test that we're using. But some of the insights this professor gave us is when these EDs fail, executive directors, they don't make thoughtful decisions. It's such an emotional business, the things they deal with. They get tied up in the emotion. They have a sense of a loss of external control, like it's not my fault. I think that's a hangover from COVID. And they're too much managed by saying good job to everybody. They want to be collaborative. It's a collaborative business, but they actually need to be more autocratic. So we're doing all this, and I will tell you, so it's just too early to say whether or not we're going to be successful, but we're going to keep feeding the model and try to hire better. We've had good experience hiring people that have a diversity of experiences versus people who've been an ED in assisted living for 15 years, and they've had 9 jobs in the last 6 years. But if they've run a SNF, if they've run hotels and retirement and also assisted living, they seem to have a diversity of experiences that are making them better candidates. So we'll keep working it. But if we keep having these people turn over, I don't know what your experience is, but if they keep quitting every 6 months or a year and a half, we got to get that tenure to 3 or 4 years where you can build a team around those people.
Doris, want to talk about maybe a little bit about the J1 visas and some of the...
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that for us, like everybody, hiring and recruiting and retention is, number one priority as, below taking care of the residents, but we need them to take care of the residents. So we kind of looked at it and we said, all right, let's just bring in, 15 different people from all different kind of areas, and let's just kind of brainstorm and focus and laser focus. So our focus this year was on 3 areas. One, we've partnered up with Argentum on the J1 visas. We have 9 buildings in the Northern Virginia, DC area, and we have a large Ghana population, and most of our directors of nursing are from Ghana. And one of the things that we found is that in Ghana, it's just a privilege to take care of the elderly. That's how they view it. So what better person do I want to put with our residents? And so with the Argentum program, we've been able to work through the J1 visas with Ghana. That's been a very friendly country, and so we've kind of tackled it one. And I always say, recruiting is like census. If there was one area where you could get all the team members or one area where you could get all the census, your salespeople and your HR people would be at that area. So we've got to kind of have different areas from a little bit from there. The second part is we invested in a program and we collaborated with 7 other operators, and we went to the community college and said, look, ECPI or those type of private universities that are super expensive, they can get an LPN out in 11 months. Why does it take like 2 years in a community college to do that? And so we invested in a program where there's 100 LPNs going through. Each of us, because I couldn't bring 100 on to my community, so we have 8 operators that are all invested. And how we did it is they came into our communities, did an orientation, spent a couple weeks with us, and now they're in an 11-month accelerated program through this community college. And so I think there's collaborations with competitors, I truly, or co-competitors as we try to, I think there's enough business for everybody, and I think that together we're stronger, right? From that piece. And then the third piece was kind of that Gen Z, those folks, and we brought some of them in. And we really found that sustainability was really important to them. And so I happen to have a friend whose brother is the CFO of Patagonia. And so we went out to Patagonia because I feel like they're sustainable. You read their website. And we learned a lot about it. And we actually have a sustainability coordinator, and we partnered up with Virginia Tech. And so that alone, that recruiting side has brought so many different people. It's amazing from there. But we realized that sustainability was important to that generation, so we try to make sure we embody that. And of course, the fourth is DEI. And if you go on RUI's website, you can look at our leadership page. We don't need a program. We embody DEI. We hire the best people, and somehow we are just one DEI commercial, I feel like, is our leadership page, and somehow it works, so we're excited. But I think that's kind of the goal, is whether it's recruiting team members or it's developing our censuses, there's no home run, so you've got to figure pieces, but you got to go way out of the blocks, right? And so that's kind of some of the things that we've been working on.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely have the most diversity that I've seen in the space, for sure. It's incredible. Chris, I forgot to have you talk a little bit about the Moneyball.
Well, that's really was it. Those 4 strands.
Okay.
What we're doing, that is the Moneyball. We're really trying to use data to hire better and sort of de-emphasize the interview and look more at the data. everybody thinks they're good at interviewing. There's a great book, Malcolm Gladwell, called Talking to Strangers. We all suck at interviewing. You just get deceived by people talking. And if you don't believe that, go read the book. I mean, it's really true. And I know I have. So I'm not interviewing these people now. I let my team members interview them. But I just look at the data and I give my opinion, but I get vetoed. And then I say, I told you so.
So, you know, I was talking to my good friend Scott Stewart earlier today and kind of talking about this discussion. And Dave, you alluded to it with the banks and that, you know, we're here. And one of the things is, Fee talked about this morning about 72 million seniors we've hit, where we finally have got the silver tsunami that's coming, right? We see all the metrics, we know that it's here, and then we step into one of the worst banking environments that we've probably ever seen obviously from all different things, but particularly development. How do you all, where do you think we go from not having enough demand or space to meet the demand in the next 3 to 5 years, which we've seen is going to be here?
This will have a happy ending. It's just going to get messy between then. We've been here before. I mean, there was we've had crashes in real estate cycles before, and when a lot of people run this way, there's a few people that run that way. They find a piece of property they've been looking at for 20 years. There's never, ever been a time they could ever get that piece of property, and now they can. Or, you know, they've been waiting and patient, ready to get into this industry, and they've been patient and they didn't jump, now they can. And this will all wash through. I mean, this is not the first time we've been through a real estate cycle. It slows some things down, and in some ways the rich get richer, and the disciplined developer and investor, the investor that knows this business, they knew the risks, they were careful, they are going to make it through, they use debt appropriately, not inappropriately. This will wash some people away and the other people remain. So we will get through this because it is absolutely true of two things. Number one, Bob's absolutely right. What tomorrow's customer is looking for is very different than what yesterday's customers are looking for. And if we don't pivot to that, then we'll die the death of BlackBerry. You know, they were on the top of the world for a minute, and now they're gone. And so is Blockbuster, and so are many other people. And we can't get complacent or give up. I mean, we have to create an environment that's like amazing. And we all have certain communities that are amazing. And they're not necessarily the ones that are brand spanking new with the best architect in this beautiful new community. I mean, there are some that we have that are 30 years old, but I walk into that community and I'm like, if I could only get every community to feel like this. And that's all about the humans that I was just talking about. But the human factor will never be replaced. That vibe cannot be replaced by AI or a robot. You know, that's what we need. And all those folks that are in there are vibrant and happy and enjoying themselves. And that social atmosphere is what they lack in their beautiful homes. So you can look at all the numbers and all that, but we can double once again how many people are willing to come into our industry and live in our industry, so we can kind of double this twice. Number one, with the number of people that are getting of an age, and number two, by doubling the appeal, you know, of what we create. And that's really up to us, and it doesn't mean we have to spend $800,000 a unit to build a new building. I mean, we're going to be able to buy those for $300,000 a unit because somebody is going to get washed out of that. So as operators, we're still going to operate, but what we have to do is we have to make sure we make sure we give the customer what they're looking for and not lose sight of that, which is exactly what Bob's talking about. And we have to remember that what they want tomorrow is not what they wanted yesterday. And so I still think it's a super, super bright future. I think we can get more efficient with things like AI and technology and watch the data and look at the numbers. And I think AI can be remarkable. I mean, I listened today and you sort of think, well, but how can I do that? And I can tell you, you know, AI is remarkable. You see these Waymo cars, and they have so many sensors on them. They know when to slow down and speed up. They're better drivers than we are as humans. But, you know, if we had AI cameras, and I know this sounds creepy, but everything sounded creepy when it first came out. But if we had AI cameras that could tell the difference between a staff and a visitor and a resident, and they knew that resident, and between facial recognition and the gate and everything else, and they know that that resident is not coming out of her room anymore, and she used to come out all the time, or her gait's a little different, or she's walking a little slower. I mean, we can capture care and also, understand when that person's not being engaged like they used to, and we can service that resident better. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we can do with this technology for the resident, and how we get there, I'm not 100% sure, but I think those are some of the things that I think about when I think about how technology can change us for the resident and to build, this vision that Bob's talking about.
That's great.
Well, I was going to say the more things change, the more they stay the same in some ways. It still comes down to the build. I'm only as good, Pegasus is only as good as the local team and the people and the culture of that building. And that's true with you, right? I'm sure you guys we have worse buildings than you, and maybe vice versa in some locations. It's hard to get the culture all the way down and have consistency. It starts with executive director. But the theme is reinvent or evolve. I think we can evolve if we stay on top of technology, stay on top of the care piece, and do this business the right way. I do think baby boomers will come to us, not when I think if we tell stories better about what we offer. I think like Got Milk. I wish we could do more with the industry to tell the story, because I think we do a better job than we give what is certainly in the press. And if we do that, we're going to keep attracting. But one of my real fears is I already hate the term silver tsunami, because I think we're going to get overbuilt again if we're not careful. Because of what Bob said this morning, yeah, the numbers are there, but what product in what market? And you can go get the data, and pretty much you have confirmation bias. These groups come in, they've heard silver tsunami, they're just going to go build it, and they can go get the data and just make a decision. But you have to look very carefully at the data, and I don't think the feasibility approaches. I wish the banks would. Back in the day, you had to get a Big 4 or Big 8 to do a feasibility study for a continuing care retirement community. That's where I started. Paul Steinhoff and Earl Wade, these guys who were Big 8 partners, invented that methodology, which I learned that from them. That's how I started my career. You don't do that anymore. You just go, you spend 15 grand and go build a $40 million project. And that's why there became 19 assisted living memory care in McKinney, Texas. And half of them aren't full still. Atlanta, you don't need any new assisted. Please don't go build in Atlanta. Talk to me. I'll buy you a bottle of whiskey and we can talk about it. It's overbuilt. I mean, maybe in 3 years there'll be demand in Atlanta. But right now, it is massively overbuilt. There's all sorts of stuff being shut down to become other uses in Atlanta right now.
Yeah, I think, so I also oversee our development company, and we've got 2 shovels in the ground right now and getting ready to put 4. And I think there's a combination, I think, what Bob had said earlier, but, for us, the baby boomers are not going to move into the same place they moved their mom into, from a technology, a design, and an amenity standpoint. And so we've had to, like this says, reinvent and evolve those spaces, and we're trying to do that now with a building that's going to open up in 24 months, right? And try to anticipate what that long term is, so we don't build a building and then have to remodel it, in 5 years. So I think that we're really being thoughtful for that and trying to blend those pieces. I think that, like Chris was saying, we're really making sure. I wish I only had to spend $15,000 to get some of these construction loans. I think right now in this market, any of the investors are looking for a very long, they're vetting everything out, right? Because it's so hard right now to get a construction loan and to get investment in new development. So I think there's a lot more vetting, which puts a lot of ownership on the operator. If you're an operator developer, from there, there's a lot more teeth in the game that was 10 years ago, where I think everybody was building. So we've been a lot more thoughtful in where we are and what's coming down the pipeline. But I think being mindful, like Dave was saying, and making sure that we understand who our customers are now, but who are our customers, with the 80-year-olds, where were they when they were 25 to 35? What are they looking for in their design and their amenity and technology? One of the things we've done is we've built an app that we worked with Silicon Valley, some programmers to kind of create that and get feedback, but also kind of give our customers and our families what they're looking for. And so we're trying to evolve and keep pace, but not get distracted by that, because I think adoption is one thing that we're very focused on. But I'm a nurse. I was a nurse in the Army before getting into senior living. I've been in senior living. This will be my 30th year. I was recovering skilled nursing facility person for 20 years, and then I came to the good side. And so I think that it always starts with care, and we always say if the clinical and the care is there, the financial will follow, and I think that will resonate for the next 20 years.
Well, this was great. We're standing between you and the bar, and first of all, I thank you all. I mean, I'm so impressed by all of you up here and everything that you all are doing, and really enjoyed our individual conversations. We've got about 5 more minutes, and I thought it would be great. We wanted to open up for a handful of questions.
Yeah, just raise your hand, and I will. My man over here is like, wouldn't that be funny if you had your beer bottle in your hand and you thought it was a microphone? We have a couple right here. I'm going to go to you first.
Hi, Doris, the J1 visa program is really interesting. So, or not the J1, the LPN with the college. So when people come on and they do their trainings, do they have to make a commitment to maybe stay on after they complete the program? What's that term? What are the conditions of that?
I mean, we hope so, right? I mean, you can have them sign a document, and and it's all pre-vetted, and we hope that they have a great experience. And I think that working with Ashante at Argentum, I think that part of to hopefully increase that chances is by bringing them in first, having them spend a couple weeks and going through onboarding and orientation, getting to know our culture, and then going out to the school. And I think we've also looked at a lot of resources that are preventing, because there's a lot of life skills resources that prevent folks from graduating. And so I think trying to be helpful and thoughtful, then hopefully they pay it forward to us.
I'm Peter Kress. Here's what I heard you all say. For our traditional market, our upper market, we can evolve and succeed against boomer requirements. For middle market, we're going to have to reinvent, because we're not going to get there from where we are today in our existing structures. Was I hearing right?
I mean, that's the way I see it. These lights are crazy, by the way. It's like I'm being interrogated. But it's just I just don't think the economics work for what I would call the middle market without getting some sort of reimbursement either through managed care, Medicare Advantage, federal government PACE programs, putting different pieces together. I think it's going to be tough.
I think, there's a model to have somebody survive, lower rents with a dining program without care and unlicensed. That removes a layer of risk, but how are they going to get the care they need? And I think then you have to assume then that there can be a care delivery model that can supplement that, but it's probably going to have to come from the outside or from a separate entity. That part is difficult, but I think some of the risks in the business, in a licensed facility type arrangement, are really difficult to deal with. So it probably becomes a little more of an a la carte program from my standpoint.
I think it's interesting because we operate in the higher end market, and so through acquisition, we've learned a little bit about the middle market, and it is obviously for obvious reasons, I think. But we also are owners, and I think that's a little bit different, because you were saying margin and NOI, and we go all the way down to net income, right? Because we're paying our own bill. And I think Mr. Fairland, the chairman of our board, 45 years ago when he started, we are very low leverage financially, and I think that's what helped us. And I think we stayed true to that, and that's what helped us. And that's part of why we're able to grow, is that we have a lot of equity in our buildings. And so I think that we're looking for opportunities to deliver that same service. If you look at RUI's, website, we have 6 core signature programs: RUI University, RUI Fit, Lux Unlimited, and Leash on Life, and so forth. And we make sure that whether it's the middle market buildings that we're starting to acquire versus our high-end, DC buildings, that we deliver the same type of service. But it's very challenging, and at some point something has to give. And so we're just going one day at a time. Like we were talking about, is if rate is a problem in middle market, we're looking at ancillary options. And so 2 of the options that we've started is we started our own salon company, and we've gotten cosmetology licenses so we can take folks from the outside. So we've built out and spent some money in some of these middle markets to build full-on salons that do everything from Botox with nurse practitioners to massage to facials to hair and nails, so it's not your typical shampoo and set. That revenue is helping offset maybe a building that has lower rent rates, and so that can provide some of those true signature programs that we want to deliver our mission, for our residents.
Let's give them a hand right now for a very, very good discussion. Thank you very much.